Hello, Melanie.
Hi, Jacopo.
Nice to see you again. I would say here. This is a back story, but okay. Thank you very much for taking some time to do this. And I wanted to start to say how we introduced each other, which we met at Qonto. That was 2021, I believe, end of 2021, when I joined as a product designer in November, and you were already working as a UX writer at the time.
At that time, yes.
Okay. So for everyone listening at home, like, would you mind saying how did you get started at Qonto?
Yeah, indeed, thanks for having me again, indeed. I joined Qonto on my side on April 2020. Fun story, I mean, well, not that fun though, but I knew Qonto from the very beginning. A friend of mine used to be the first product designer at Qonto. Um, and I was like super impressed by the scale of the company, how much they valued content. And at that time on my side, I'm originally from the translation and localization field. I've been working mainly in luxury, so nothing to do with fintech. And at that time, I was living in the south of France, working so as a freelance copywriter and translator. And I couldn't find like anything matching actually what I was looking for. And super casually, I found one job desk talking at that time about UX writing. So I was like, okay, let me check it. I was surrounded by a few product designers. I was somehow already into design. And I was, wow, that's the perfect match between what you're doing and what I'm doing. Let me check a bit further. At that time in France, like 4 years ago, there was literally nothing about UX writing. So somehow I trained myself with what I could find, mainly from the States, and I reached out to a few people on LinkedIn. I think there were like literally 5 persons with like UX writer in their job title, and super casually I found a girl so working at Qonto that used to work for the same company I was working before. Didn't meet her in that company, but yeah, I was like super curious about the way she was working at Qonto. She was working as a copywriter for the German market. I was okay, we have something in common. As I told you, I already knew Qonto, so I was like, yeah, I will be curious to see what you're doing. So if you can tell me more, really without like having anything in mind. But anyway, so then she actually did a really good job presenting me Qonto, how was the team, the work that she was doing. And then she was like, actually, we are looking for a product copywriter. I was like, And I was telling you, I was living in the south of France, not finding any company matching what I was looking for. So I was like, okay, let's give it a try. And yeah, here I am still 4 years after.
And do you remember when your role changed from product copywriter to UX writer?
Yeah. Actually, it's pretty fast. I joined in April 2020, and I became officially a UX writer. I think in August, September on that same year. Basically, when I joined, there was like a person in charge of the in-app content, but really at the very end, he was involved at the very end of the process. Like really, this. I still can hear this. Can you put the cherry on the cake? Because those little sparkles about the copy, review the tone of voice and everything. And so he left the company in August. And so at that time, my manager asked me if I wanted to take over that scope. So I was still handling both product copywriting, aka all the content related to the product, but outside the product itself, and the UX writing part. And the more I was involved, the more I was like, okay, I definitely need to be involved actually earlier in the process. And that's how we started creating basically the expertise at Qonto.
Yeah. So I've got asked this question by people out of tech, basically. So could you describe what is UX writing?
It's still got that question quite often indeed. The way I tend to say it in a very simple way, it's making sure that we give the right information at the right moment, at the right place for the user so they can have the best experience using the product. So we do collaborate with product managers, but obviously with product designers. So it's exactly this, like what's the user problem? How do we solve it? And on our side, we'll more focus indeed on that content part.
Yep. Yeah, great. And so you said you work closely with product designers, and mostly product designers and product managers. And so also related to then UX writing fits into the design and general process. Like, how does it fit exactly into the design process, and what are the differences, if any?
Yeah. Basically, we try as much as possible to fit into that design process. The way we are, for example, handling things at Qonto, it really depends on the type of project. Basically, let's say when we think it's important for us to be involved from the very beginning, we will participate just like product designers, product managers, also product marketing managers can do in all the research. The idea is definitely not to duplicate the work, but make sure that everyone focus on their own expertise. So on our side, we'll focus, I don't know, on all the hierarchy of information, really what's the voice of customer, how do they actually, what's the word they're using. We're gonna use our content system, so literally content design system, tone of voice, overall UX writing guidelines, have in mind taxonomy. Then we're gonna also think about, also at Qonto, for example, our product is available in 5 languages, all the localization constraints that we can have, both in terms of length, but also cultural. So that's why we really speak about localization. Also, really that technical aspect about, I don't know, if I have to use a variable, is it like feminine, masculine, plural, singular? So all that kind of stuff, we're gonna have it in mind. Depending on the project, it can arrive before or a bit later on. And then it's really about, okay, as I was telling you, what's the problem? What do we try to achieve with that project? How do we solve it? And then really pairing with product designers and really working on the solution together and mapping together the user journey. And then so we move on our side with, like, as I was telling you, localization. How do I ensure that the message I'm writing in English, on our side we start with English, will be available in other markets?
Yeah. Well, what would you say is the most challenging thing about the UX writing design process?
Oh, wow. There are a few. I think what today, something we faced at Qonto, I personally faced, it was like really assessing in it when is the right moment. So we went from different strategies. At first, as I was telling you, it was at the very end, doesn't work. At the very beginning, works. But then we also realized that not in all cases, in the sense that today, in terms of ratio, I think we have 1 UX writer for 3 product designers, which is a very good ratio. At Qonto, we're like a team of 20, which is like pretty big for the market. Ideally, we'd like to have 1 UX writer, 1 product designer. It doesn't work. I mean, it does work, but that's not the case today. So the way we're like trying to approach things, it's like, okay, on which project should we be involved at the very beginning? Because that's where we actually can make the most of our expertise and have the bigger impact. And so that's something we think on a daily basis, depending on the project. So we've put also things in place to make sure that when we're not involved from the very beginning, that first somehow we can get involved when it's the right time. And sometimes we actually also made the choice to not necessarily be involved and rely on product managers and product designers to do the UX writing part, let's say. I did definitely not to create silos, but to handle that part, also relying on the system we have.
Yeah. And okay, so knowing when to intervene, basically, because of limited resources. And then what about not just for a project, but for a company? Like, when would you say is the right time for a company that is growing, maybe an early stage startup, to start using a UX writer? Like, is it like from the beginning, or maybe there's a best time approach?
Of course, like I strongly believe that's an expertise everyone should consider. However, I know how it works when you just created your company. So I will say, like, even though you don't have like in-house UX writers, so full-time UX writer working with you on the field, definitely having like that it's an expertise per se, and it's not just words. So approaching it like eventually from a system point of view, having things in mind. So like really clear recommendations, tone of voice, somehow some guidelines that you can follow whenever it's relevant or not. Or also like having people from the outside, like we have like there are like a lot of freelance UX writers that can work as consultant as well and helping you. So if you can have someone, I will definitely advocate for the sooner the better, but at least like having this expertise in mind and putting things in place as soon as possible.
Because also I think, I mean, the role in itself as the company grows will change. So maybe the UX writer just with that role might come in later, like when a company is a bit more mature. But at the beginning, you still need someone to do like you were, like a product copywriter, you know. So you can change the role, but you still need someone to fill in that responsibility and the things to do. So yeah, I think it's just interesting how the role can change. The role and the title can change, but you know, the figure that that person has to do, like you always need that someone.
Yeah, I mean the expertise is pretty different between copywriting and UX writing. So the skills as well, but somehow you will need someone to talk or inside your product or outside about your product.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, something we mentioned last time, which was pretty interesting, which was the best copy is sometimes no copy. So not just, you know, the usage of words, but also in the design was like having someone who thinks about how to structure the content, the information itself, which is not just how to use the words.
Exactly. So your of information is key indeed, and I strongly believe that less is more in UX writing. And sometimes I feel like actually people tend to say a lot, most of the time actually to fix what eventually is a broken design, or like because it's broken, so we feel we have like to say a lot, or it's because we're actually explaining the design, which somehow means also that it's broken. And I hear a lot, and sometimes even at Qonto, like on the, yeah. In any case, like people don't read. I have somehow like some mixed feelings regarding that statement, because I actually do believe that people read when it's not clear, and because when it's like so smooth, so specific, so accurate, and so intuitive, the overall experience, because it's never content and design and or UI, basically it's an overall experience. Like indeed you won't read every single word, every single comma and full stop, because it's just like, yeah, really smooth. So in my humble opinion, people do read. It just depends on the context, but yeah, long story short, less is more when it comes to UX writing. Also because again, in terms of localizations, I do believe that today in 2024, most of products are localized at least in one language, so available in two, and you definitely have it. You need to have it in mind.
Yeah, actually, that must be challenging as well, like dealing with multiple languages, especially if you don't speak all of the languages. Okay, and well, maybe we can also talk about your experience as a lead now, because so you moved from individual contributor to lead. When was that?
2 years ago, in April 2022.
Yeah. And how was the change, and what are the main differences?
The change was that's funny, because I always used to say like, I don't want to be a manager, like that's not for me. At Qonto we have like two paths, so expert and lead. I was like, I'm definitely on the expert path. I've been lucky enough to have like a manager was like definitely not forcing me, but like I still believe like that management path can be for you. So somehow, yeah, he trained me on that path. I ended up making the move with like any regrets. Today I'm really, really, really happy about this move. I think what was the most challenging part for me at the very, very beginning, it's like, you know, I feel like as an IC, individual contributor, it's somehow like easy to know the value you can bring. It's like you have like a goal of the day, you know what you want to achieve. At the end of the day, job is done, cool. When I became manager, then I didn't have like, you know, this production anymore, like phase. I wasn't on the field anymore. So it was like really through my team. And I struggled a lot at first to see the value I was bringing. Like I remember having discussions with my manager. And I was I feel like maybe that's one, the famous one indeed. But definitely it was more like on the sense like, I was like, my days are like really busy. I'm here like with the team. I feel like I'm definitely doing things, but I was like struggling to really feel the essence of that. It took me actually a while indeed before like saying like, okay, no, I'm definitely like building something here with the team.
Like I got this, yeah. And related to that, what do you think are the best skill for a manager? And then also, what are the best skills for a UX writer, like someone in your team, for example? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so if I start with manager, if I frame it to three, I will say trust and reliability with the team. That's definitely not something I take for granted, and it's something that it's at the end it's like a corporate relationship. So it's like it can work only if the both parts like are into it with its limitations of course, but yeah, definitely need to trust my team. Then on my side, the way I approach things, what I want with my team is like I always tell them actually today I'm managing like 5 people, and I always tell them like if my team if they do need me to make every single decision, then it means that I'm definitely doing something wrong as a manager. I'm definitely here to support them 100%. But my goal is also to give them models so they have like control points, checkpoints, and then they are able to make a decision. It might not be the right one, and that's completely okay. Let's learn from that. But at least they can make one, and then don't feel like they're lost if I'm not around, because who am I first? And my goal is actually for them to be able to grow and yeah, eventually become lead on. Exactly. And maybe a third thing as a manager, again, I guess it's really like I'm a bit framed as well by Qonto, because I've been working there like for 5 years now, 4 years, sorry, and two as a manager. But the way we work, we have this idea of like really reflecting on the way we do things, and so that's an exercise as well that I do with my team. So I'm also looking for someone who is like really in that reflection mode on how do we do things, like putting like really the why and the rationale behind what they do, especially in UX writing, because objectively, like everyone can write, but not everyone is a writer. And we do know as UX writers that every single choice we make is for a very, very specific reason. So it's really cool to have that exchange on the rationale, on like, okay, why this and not that? Have you explored other things? And it's really, yeah, again, related to the way we work at Qonto. So I will definitely look for that skill in a individual contributor. Also, I think it's something that I've already mentioned somewhere else, but empathy is key. As UX writer, it's design, so you definitely need to get into your customer's shoes, into the world, really understand how they might feel, how they feel, what are the pains. And so, yeah, it's very, very important skill. Then, so I've mentioned that the reflection on this is pure execution. It's completely okay to be in that mode as well, depending on the context and the setup you have. It's just not what we will look at Qonto. And I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And yeah, that's those are quite some skills. But no, yeah, I know, like you'll expect a lot.
Yeah, that we have pretty
high expectations.
Exactly. Well, you've been there, you know how it is.
And what if there's any not flaw, but something that is missing maybe between design, UX writing at the moment, something that can be improved, whether in terms of processes or what do you see, like in like general practices right now of like UX writing, something do you think that either at Qonto or in the industry in general can be improved? Is there something you can think of?
Yeah, there is always room for improvement. Maybe what I will stick to Qonto because it's my reality today. Maybe it's the way we document. Actually, documentation. It's really key. So I'm not necessarily talking about the system itself, which is something more like investing a lot and working a lot right now on at Qonto, but really on the collaboration, on Figma, because it's good. We need to pair, we need to work together, but at some point, we also need our own focus time to move on our own things. And sometimes what we can see on Figma, product designer will keep moving with some explorations, while UX writer will keep moving eventually with some more research on glossary, taxonomy, like research. And so basically at the end, like it happened I've seen that situation a lot. I'm like, oh, I just came back to the Figma and I have like 300 new screens. Well, that's a bit exaggerated, but you get the idea. And so it's like, okay, how we can keep the pace as well on keep exploring, but without being together for 7 hours, which we can understand you can spend like your entire days there, because you also definitely in your focus time based also on your personality, how you would like to work. And so how do we keep iterating, documenting what we're like doing, so we make sure that we don't miss anything, especially because sometimes you have like small flows, but we can end up, on my side for example, I'm focused on the onboarding flow, you can end up with like very very heavy flows, and just making sure that you don't miss anything. Don't have the secret recipe, that's something we learn on the go, but I think that's where we can improve.
And on the same, like the documentation like topic, do you have a design system or a content system? Like, what do you use to basically make decisions that are aligned in the whole app?
Yeah, good question. So indeed, we do have like a content system. So in that content system, you will find the glossary that we share. So UX writers own it in the sense that they are in charge of filling it, they use it, but then we also share it with product marketing managers, copywriters from the marketing team, for example, as well customer success. So we share it like with other stakeholders. We have our tone of voice that is actually owned by a marketing team, making sure that indeed we do speak we do have the same voice across the product. The tone can be different, but the voice is still the same. We have as well, so I mentioned, we do have then what we call like content design system, which is indeed shared like across all the expertise that we have within the design studio, so product design and also brand design. The way we approach it is really like by use case and not component, because it just makes more sense according to us. And so we actually indeed work on the documentation together by use cases. And then we can have, so I mentioned glossary. And overall also like UX writing recommendations.
Yeah. You mentioned the tone of voice a few times. Like, could you give a hint to the people who don't know, what is the tone of voice and how do you find it and what's the purpose of it basically?
Yeah, it's basically the voice of, like, it's your identity through the voice. It's like, how do you speak to your customers, users? And so you have one common voice, and then you have like a different tone depending on what's the platform you are using. So you might not use the exact same tone on a website. This is a marketing email. This is a FAQ article. In the end, we do have like a lot of content. I think we don't really realize, but everything is word basically. So it's just like where you put the cursor. So it's really giving like an identity to your company and the voice literally to your company. So people say like, I can recognize actually that brand through the content. So it's really about making choice. For example, at Qonto we have like 3 main pillars. It's hands-on, bold, and snappy. And so we have like different cursors depending on like the platform. So in app, for example, we will be like a lot hands-on, a bit less bold because that's not the purpose. Like on the website or like a marketing campaign, like full snappy and bold. So it really depends.
Okay, I have a couple more quick questions. One is, what is the number one mistake that you see junior UX writers make? So someone who is new and you see that, like, because I mean, that was a good question, like for
I got the question.
Designers as well, because sometimes, I mean, I do see probably not a mistake, but something that they don't focus enough probably in the early stages, which is probably communication, iteration. They think they can just go and do the thing and just like focus on the tool and the design instead of like focus on the whole team. So I don't know if there's something similar for.
No, definitely. I guess like the first, indeed, somehow it's something that I've been mentioning. It's maybe like lacking rational on the way they make decisions. So, because for example, we could be like 10 around the table and we could have like 10 different versions and eventually all of them could work. You just need, however, we think that one eventually will work a bit better, you need indeed to be able to explain why and align stakeholders around it based on voice of customer, on data, on the system. But like you need to be clear on why you are making that choice. It doesn't mean that you are not open to feedback at all. Like, please receive the feedback, hear it, but then it also actually helps you make sure that you build like a strong rationale. So I think that will be like eventually one of the mistake, then more related to the craft itself, really, on how to produce something that I see a lot on, for example, on during interviews, is what I was telling you, like saying way too much, or like somehow like repeating what the user just did, what the user will do after. And so then you get completely lost in, okay, what do I have to do like right now to move on to the next step? So it's like really focus on what do you need from the user at this very specific moment. Don't focus on what happened before, what happens next.
Okay. And last question, on the other side, what is the most important thing that a good UX writer should have or should focus on?
And then I will say, like, to basically doing the opposite of what I've just shared.
Being good rational and making sure that, you know, the rationale they're using is aligned within the company. I think that's especially important with bigger teams.
Yeah.
It's not just you and your preference, it's the preference of supposedly thousands of customers that you are trying to start with.
Yeah, but it's also like, even though you are like on your own, it will also help you like approach things from like systemic, like system-wise, basically. So you know why you are like making this choice at this specific stage. Maybe something like I can share more on like the common trap as well that we're saying is like, I hear a lot, yeah, UX writing is about being consistent. Yes, but only when it's like relevant. So don't feel like you have to follow like a consistency pattern if it's not relevant in that specific case. So it's okay if at some point, I know you say like confirm, but here it's not really about confirming. It's, I know, validating. Two different actions, but sometimes, you know, you can be like so stubborn with like, yeah, but I did this like last time. Yeah, cool. But last time was a different use case, different pattern, different section. It doesn't make any sense.
Every rule has
exactly.
exceptions.
So that's why we tend to see things as like recommendations, and then to actually empower the team to think about the way they're doing things, and not just say like, okay, it's written like that in the system, so I have to do it. Does it make sense here? Yes. Cool. Great. Like, let's follow the system. It doesn't. Okay, cool. Let's break the system.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you soon.
See you. Thanks, JKPO.